Hello there, a very good evening and welcome to another edition of Primetime News on TV1. I'm Charlotte Benedict for the Newsfirst team.
And I'm Thiruni Karnaratna. Before we take a look at your stories in detail, here are your headlines for tonight.
Presidential election between the 17th of September and the 16th of October, says Election Commission. Sri Lanka's path across the Vine Bridge, President says no other way out, calls for a common consensus.
මේ මල් වට්ටියට අත ගහමු. අපි අද කටයුතු කරන ආකාරය ගැන අනාගතයේ දවසේ අපිව විනිශ්චයට භාජනය වෙයි.
People are burdened. Corrupt deals continue. Opposition leader responds to the president.
ඉතින් මේ නිර්මාණය වුණයි කියන සාමාන්‍ය නිර්මාණය වෙලා තිබෙන්නේ ජනතාවගේ හිස මත අති දැවැන්ත පීඩනයක් නිර්මාණය වෙනවා. දැන් ගරු ජනාධිපතිතුමා කියනවා මේ ගමන හැර වෙන ගමනක් නැහැ. මේ මල් වට්ටියට අත ගහන්න.
Diana Gamage banned from leaving the country, says she will appeal against the rulings. Asia Pacific broadcasting leaders gather at the Stein Studios, discusses future plans for media in the region.
Starting off with your top story tonight, the National Election Commission said Sri Lanka's presidential election will be held between the 17th of September and the 16th of October.
When's the election?
The media release was signed by Chairman of the National Election Commission, R.M.A.L. Ratnayaka. The Election Commission said it will call for the nominations to hold the presidential election within the specified time frame in terms of the provisions of the Constitution of Sri Lanka and the Presidential Elections Act No. 15 of 1981. Commissioner General of Elections Saman Sri Ratnayaka said the authority to announce the date of the presidential election and the date of calling nominations will be transferred to the Election Commission after the 17th of July.
The official term of the president who was elected in 2019 will end on the 18th of November 2024. The presidential election should be held a month prior and within 2 months of November 18th, 2024. The Election Commission issued a press release noting that it is clearly stated in the Constitution today. We will receive authority in this regard after the month of June. Thereafter, the Election Commission is bound to follow the legal procedure with regard to calling for nominations and announcing election dates. We requested the funds required for the 2024 presidential election from the 2024 budget. The budget approved the funds. Parliament manages state finances and it has allocated the relevant funds. We believe we will receive the funds at the appropriate time when the election is announced. No, there is a possibility of a general election being announced. Parliamentarians can present a proposal to the Speaker to dissolve Parliament and pass it. If not, the President can dissolve Parliament at any given time and hold an election, because the term of Parliament has been over 2.5 years.
President Ranil Wickremesinghe, in a statement to Parliament this morning, emphasized that there exists no alternative path for rebuilding the economy and underscored the imperative of forging a common consensus around the economic reform agenda. He noted that today's actions will be scrutinized in the future.
President Ranil Wickremesinghe addressed Parliament this morning and commented on Sri Lanka's economy and journey forward. At the onset, the President recalled how we accepted the challenges.
When I assumed leadership, our nation was in crisis. The economy was severely contracted, with inflation soaring to 70%. The budget deficit had surged to over 10 to 12% of the gross domestic product, prompting an increase in the interest rate to 30%. Moreover, the value of the dollar had risen to approximately 450 Sri Lankan rupees, while our foreign exchange reserves had depleted to zero. The majority of the population found themselves on the street, with some enduring lengthy queues for necessities, while others faced prolonged struggles. At the crucial moment, no one else volunteered to shoulder the responsibility of saving the country. Instead, they put forth different conditions. I unconditionally embraced the task of leading the country. I undertook this daunting mission with confidence for three key reasons. I had a well-thought-out plan, relevant experience and established international connections. Consequently, I firmly believed that despite the country's descent into chaos, recovery was possible.
ඒ නිසා අපායට වැටලා තිබුණ මේ රට ගොඩ ගන්න පුළුවන් කියන විශ්වාසය මට තිබුණා.
The president also elaborated on how challenges were overcome.
මෙම වර්ෂයේ ආර්ථික වර්ධනය 3%.
We anticipate economic growth of at least 3% this year. Inflation has significantly decreased to 1.5%. Additionally, the primary account balance, previously in deficit for several years, turned into a surplus of 0.6% of GDP in 2023. Furthermore, interest rates decreased substantially, reaching levels as low as 10 to 13%. Tourism rebounded and remittances from foreign workers rose significantly. By the first quarter of 2024, the exchange rate dropped to less than 300 Sri Lankan rupees per US dollar. Furthermore, foreign exchange reserves exceeded $5 billion, signaling a favorable trajectory in economic stability. We reached this stage by navigating a challenging and demanding path, one that we believe to be the right course of action.
The president also commented on the future plans.
2022 වසරේ දෙසැම්බර් මාසයේදී පැවති සමස්ත ණය ප්‍රමාණය දළදේශීය නිෂ්පාදිතයේ ප්‍රතිශතයක් වශයෙන් 100%.
By December 2022, the total debt as a percentage of GDP had reached 128%, a concerning level. Hence, we devised a debt restructuring program which was structured into three primary phases. The initial phase involved restructuring domestic debt. The first phase was finalized in 2023. The second phase focused on restructuring loans obtained through official agreements with foreign countries. Following negotiations with these nations, a policy agreement on debt restructuring was successfully reached by November 2023. For this purpose, both the Paris Club and non-Paris Club countries, including China, have reached a policy agreement. The next step involves signing a memorandum of understanding with the creditor countries to finalize the process. The Sri Lankan government is presently in discussion regarding the draft with the official creditors committee. Additionally, negotiations are underway with China's Exim Bank. The third phase identified for restructuring is commercial debt. Consulting firm Lazard and Clifford Chance, representing the Sri Lankan government, are currently engaged in negotiations with creditor committees. Negotiations are progressing positively with both parties considering proposals. We aim to conclude these discussions by mid this year.
ණය හිමියන්ගේ කමිටුව සමග සාකච්ඡා කරගෙන යනවා. දෙපාර්ශ්වය මගින් ඉදිරිපත් කරන ලද යෝජනා පදනම් කරගෙන සාකච්ඡා සාර්ථකව සිදු කරමින් සිටිනවා. අපගේ අපේක්ෂාව මෙම වසර මැද වන විටදී මෙම සියලු සාකච්ඡා නිම කර ගැනීමටයි.
President Wickremesinghe also responded to requests for salary and tax adjustments.
The government has extended the maximum level of concessions it can afford. Despite receiving numerous requests for salary revisions, there is currently no government revenue growth allocated to address this in 2024. Based on the trajectory of economic growth in 2024 and the corresponding increase in government revenue, reconsideration of public sector salaries next year is a realistic possibility. Leaving the current economic program could lead us back to a huge disaster.
The president also noted that multiple legal amendments will be introduced in the future.
At
the conclusion of the debt restructuring process, we will be required to settle these debts. To do so, it is essential to increase government revenue. Also, it requires building up our foreign exchange reserves. If private sector intervention can effectively manage government enterprises, those entities burdening the people with taxes and losses should be re-evaluated given the finite nature of investments that can be mobilized domestically. The establishment of formal laws and a modern institutional framework is imperative to attract foreign investment into the country. To this end, we anticipate the establishment of a new economic commission through the amalgamation of various existing outdated institutions. Initial groundwork for establishing an international trade institute within the Ministry of Foreign Affairs has been completed, with a new law also prepared for this purpose. In the past 2 years, over 30 new laws and amendments have been enacted in this parliament with the objective of economic reforms in the country. Additionally, several similar laws are anticipated to be presented to this house in the near future. Notably, the Economic Transformation Bill, the Public Finance Bill and the Public Debt Management Bill are among the prominent legislation slated for submission.
Public Debt Management Bill.
He also noted that a unified agreement and consensus is essential for the country's reconstruction.
සමහර කණ්ඩායම් අප මේ ගත කරන්නේ අපායේ ඉන්ටර්වල් එකක් කියා පාච්චල් කරනවා. මම මේ කියන්නේ
Despite the progress, there are certain groups that are unable to tolerate this advancement and trivialize our journey by likening it to an interval in hell. Allow me to address this notion. It's crucial to recognize that deviating from our current trajectory, driven by short-term and narrow objectives lacking a long-term vision, could lead us back into the depths of economic despair. I reiterate once more, there exists no alternative path to reconstructing our economy. No other program rivals the efficacy of the one currently in place, nor does any other plan offer a viable alternative. This underscores the critical need for a unified agreement and consensus on our economic reform program. Achieving consensus extends beyond the representatives within this House. It necessitates a unified consensus, which is not solely the responsibility of public representatives in Parliament, but also falls upon religious leaders, trade unions, professionals, the business community, non-governmental organizations, various opinion leaders, individuals with social influence, and every citizen. By advancing with agreement and consensus, we have the potential to swiftly elevate our standing as a developed nation on the global stage. Otherwise, prioritizing personal interests over the nation's well-being during this critical juncture could mark the onset of significant devastation. We implore everyone to recognize these perils and strive towards a unified agreement and consensus for the greater good of the country. Together, let's nurture this endeavor to propel our nation. Our actions today will shape the future. Will we be labeled as traitors to our nation, or will we be recognized as a group that genuinely cared for our country? That is the decision we must make today.
නැතිනම් රටට ආදරය කළ පිරිසක් ලෙස හඳුන්වා ගන්නවාද? අද අපි ගත යුතු තීරණය එයයි.
After the President's special statement, a debate arose in Parliament, with the opposition leader expressing his views.
මේ නව සාමාන්‍ය තුල මම ජනාධිපතිතුමාට කියන්න කැමතියි ආර්ථික.
In this new normal, I want to bring to the President's attention that the economy has contracted, not grown. People's lives have become more difficult. Poverty and unemployment have risen. Fuel prices, gas prices and electricity bills have increased. Businesses have failed. Cases of malnutrition have increased. The people have been burdened with immense pressure. The President said there's no alternative to the current course of action. I would like to ask the President, what is the current state of affairs? It's been 2 years since we began debt restructuring process with the IMF.
වසර දෙකකට ආසන්න කාලයක් වෙනවා.
ඔව් සභානායකතුමා.
මම ඉල්ලීමක් නෑ මේක අපි විරුද්ධ වෙනවා මේ විරුද්ධ පක්ෂ නායකතුමා සමා වෙන්න මම ඔබතුමාගෙන් යෝජනා කරන්නේ.
If there's a debate about the presidential statement, I suggest that we should allow a debate on it. However, if he is making statements in the name of requesting a clarification, then it wouldn't be appropriate to add it to our agenda.
මේ විපක්ෂයේ ප්‍රධාන සංවිධායකතුමා නැගිටලා ප්‍රශ්නයක්
මේ කාරණා ගැන සභා විවාදයක් තිබුණොත් හොඳයි. මොකද
It would be good if there was a debate in Parliament about these matters, because there are different opinions. I say the responsibility for these matters lies partly with the opposition leader. If he had become Prime Minister on the 10th of April, this wouldn't have become the outcome. I did my best.
මට පුළුවන් විදියට වැඩේ කරේ.
ඔව් විපක්ෂ නායකතුමා.
ජනාධිපතිතුමා යනවනේ. ඇයි ජනාධිපතිතුමා යන්නේ? කරුණාකරලා ඉඳලා මගේ ප්‍රශ්න වලට උත්තර දෙන්න. ඇයි නැගිටලා යන්නේ? ඇයි ජනාධිපතිතුමා නැගිටලා යන්නේ? මොකද බයද? බයද? බයද උත්තර දෙන්න බැරිද? මොන නිවටකමක්ද? ඇයි උත්තර දෙන්නේ නැත්තේ?
හරි. කරුණාකරලා කරුණු පැහැදිලි කර ගැනීමකට උතුමාගේ කතාව සීමා වුණා නම් ওই ප්‍රශ්නේ මතුවෙන්නේ නැහැ.
ජනාධිපතිතුමාගේ ප්‍රකාශනය.
We listened to the President's speech respectfully and quietly. Why is the President standing up abruptly when the opposition leader is trying to ask some factual, data-driven questions? Why are you afraid?
ජනාධිපතිතුමා නැගිටලා යන්නේ.
අපි විවාදයක් කරමු. විවාදයක්
ඇයි මේ නිවටකම?
පැහැදිලි කිරීමක් කරන්න ඇහුවාම කෙකර ගගා තෙපර බබා තය භාගයක් විතර එක එක විදියට වටේ ගිහිලා ප්‍රශ්න අහන්න නැතුව.
The President was waiting to answer you, but you were just beating around the bush. There was no question. It was just noise. He doesn't know the difference between the president and the opposition leader.
කවුද කියන්නේ කියලා.
එපර ගාපු එක බබෙකුට ඊයේ ඉරණම අත්තුණා. ළඟදීම මේ අයගේ තිරණම නිර්මාණය වෙනවා.
ඒකත්
එපර ගගා කෙපර බබාලා කවුද කියන එක ඔප්පු වෙයි.
The opposition leader responded to the president's comments for a second time in parliament later in the day.
අවුරුදු දෙකක් IMF ඩීල් එක තුල ණය ප්‍රතිව්‍යුහගත කරන වැඩසටහන.
The debt restructuring program with the IMF program has now spanned across 2 years and is taking place in snail pace. The third tranche was supposed to be made available in March. The second tranche was also delayed. What might be the cause for such delay? It appears this administration has yet to embrace virtues of transparency, openness, honesty, responsibility and accountability as expected by the IMF. Is this what you call crossing the Vine Bridge? After disbursing 2 billion towards debt settlement, an additional 3 billion has been secured from multilateral creditors. 40% of the augmented income has been earmarked for the provision of meals and attire for military personnel. Where is the transparency in this arrangement? How can we reconcile a sudden increase of 75 billion in allocation for meals and attire of military personnel? Here is the evidence.
කොහොමද බිලියන 75කින් වැඩි වෙලා තියෙන්නේ? මෙන්න කාරණා. මෙන්න සාක්ෂිය. දැන් IMF එක කියලා තියෙනවා.
The IMF urges the divulgence of entities benefiting from tax exemptions and the nature of such concessions. This task remains unfulfilled. Who among the 113 extended their support to Kehelia's endeavour? You wanted to protect Kehelia. Now you have VFS Global, IVS and GBS who are trying to do what Mobitel was doing for just $1. You are expecting us to support that. At the same time, permits for taverns are being given away. You must reveal the names of the recipients. If not, the populace would assume that all 225 MPs obtained those permits for taverns. Under our government, all those permits will be terminated irrespective of party affiliations. Are you expecting us to support the issuance of permits for taverns? The president states that Asia's largest battery storage facility will be in Sri Lanka. What happened to the Punakari project? An unsolicited proposal was awarded to a company that installs rooftop solar panels. The permit was issued so that it can be exploited. What has happened to that project? At this moment, the websites of those firms have different board of directors. Are you expecting us to support these moves? We have given our blessing for all positive endeavors. The president accepted it as well.
ආශිර්වාදය ලබා දීලා තියෙනවා. ඒක ජනාධිපතිවරයාත් පිළිගන්නවා. එතුමාගේ කතාවේදී.
මම මෙතුමාගෙන් අහන්න කැමති ආමි එකේ නිලධාරීන්ට යුනිෆෝම් එකට තමයි එලවන්ස් එක දෙන්නේ.
It was said that 40% of revenue is allocated for the military. I would like to inform him that an allowance is given for the uniform of military personnel. The allowance for the meals have also been classified as living out. That is added to the salary. That is why the cost has increased. Is it wrong to give a better pay for the military?
යන්නේකට විරුද්ධකමටද ඒ කුහකකමද ඒ පෙන්වුවේ කියන එක මම මේ වෙලාවේ කියනවා. දෙවනි රිවිව් එක අවසන් කරන්නේ.
The second review was completed on the 21st of March 2024. After the staff level agreement is completed, the matter is directed to the IMF board for the tranche to be released. There is a process that needs to be followed. You questioned if we have a lack of transparency and if that is the reason for the delay. He is lying here. In 2022, 4% tax concessions were granted, resulting in a loss in revenue. The government stopped awarding selective concessions.
මේක නොකරන්නේ විනිවිදභාවයක් නැති හින්දාද කිව්වා මෙතුමා මේ විදිහට ඇවිල්ලා බොරු කියන්නේ මොන අරමුණක් එක්කද
මම මේ කාරණාව ඉදිරිපත් කරන්නේ හමුදාවට විරුද්ධවත් රණවිරුවන්ට විරුද්ධවත් නෙවෙයි.
I did not make such comments to hurt the military or war heroes. Is 4% of income tax given for these supplies or the personnel? Is this a food allowance or is it a uniform allowance? Elaborate on this in a transparent manner.
This is repetition. ජනහා සංඛ්‍යාලේඛන දෙපාර්තමේන්තුව තමයි
The Department of Census and Statistics estimates these costs and delivers them to the Ministry of Defence. The government makes decisions based on the data provided by the Department of Census and Statistics.
සංඛ්‍යාලේඛන දෙපාර්තමේන්තුව විසින් ලබා දෙන තොරතුරු සහ දත්ත මත තමයි රජයේ තීන්දුව ගත්තේ.
මම මොනම අවස්ථාවකදීවත් ත්‍රිවිධ හමුදාව
I never spoke against the three armed forces or the police. We have no issue with the provisions given to war heroes. However, if this is given to the suppliers, we can assume that 40% of the income tax revenue is allocated for this. It was confirmed by publicfinance.lk. I have evidence for what I said. and I place them to be included in the Hansard.
Today marks 2 years since the attack on Aragalaya on the 9th of May at Golface, which came after a political meeting. Activists from the Aragalaya held a joint media briefing today.
Members of civil organizations, trade unions and mass organizations joined the media briefing.
Today is the 9th of May, the day that taught lessons to former members of parliament and government officials. Today the president made a special statement in parliament. But what was announced? Nothing. We were waiting to see if he would say the issues in the country were resolved. He said he crossed the Vine Bridge while the people were criticizing him. That is his latest story, his series about the Vine Bridge. This is the 4th chapter of the 4th series. His statement didn't include anything about resolving the country's issues. Ranil Wickremesinghe is the person who played tactics to postpone the local government election. He is now playing tactics to stay in power. While he plays all these games, the Election Commission today announced a time period for when the presidential election will be held. That is another historic event on the 9th of May. We would like to inform Ranil Wickremesinghe to refrain from playing games to postpone this election.
You can't continue this drama by just distributing dry rations and increasing wages for estate workers. If Ranil Wickremesinghe is under the impression that he can garner votes by doing so, it is not going to happen. You all are corrupt. Court has ruled you as economic criminals. What are you trying to do in the guise of developing the country?
Listen to the people. Ranil Rajapaksa is a Satan who dragged our country away from a massive positive transformation. There are enough people who are willing to fight against that.
Memorial services were held honouring the late former Member of Parliament Amarakirthiyatta Korala today. A religious event was held at the Sri Abhayaramaya Temple in Narayanpita.
මම දන්නේ යම්කිසි වෙනසක් උදෙසා අරගල කරා නම් ඒ අරගලයේ ත්‍රස්තවාදී වැඩපිළිවෙලක් බවට පරිවර්තනය කළා මේ රටේ ප්‍රජාතන්ත්‍රවාදී ක්‍රමවේදයෙන් පිටතට ගිහිල්ලා ආණ්ඩු පිහිටවන උත්සාහ කරගත්තු පිරිසකුත් ඉන්නවා. ඉතින් අද අපි විශ්වාස කරනවා ජනතාව ඊට වඩා බුද්ධිමත්ව කල්පනා කළා.
A memorial service was also held in memory of Amarakirthiyatta Korala and his security officer who were killed in the Nitambua town.
රට වෙනුවෙන් අවංකවම හිටගන්න මහින්ද රාජපක්ෂ කඳවුරේ නියෝජිතයෙක් හැටියට ඒ කඳවුරට සහයෝගය දෙන කෙනෙක් හැටියට මම මාත් එක්ක සිටින මේ රටේ ගුරු විදුහල්පතිවරු එක්ක අපි රොද්ද බඳිනවා නැවත වරක් අපේ ආණ්ඩුවක් පිහිටවලා මේ රටට සාධාරණයක් ඉෂ්ට කරන්න.
Another group of activists of the Aragalaya held a gathering at the Dr. N.M. Pereira Centre in Borella this morning under the theme Puravasi Aragalaya ආදරයට වේදනාව දුන්න දවස ඔබේ කතාව අපිට කියන්න එන්න. A heated situation arose due to an objection directed at the social activist known as Jean Auntie who arrived at the gathering. The discussion recommenced shortly after and the group expressed their views to media thereafter.
When Gotabaya Rajapaksa was taking this country towards a precipice, the Aragalaya activists stopped him with great difficulty. These activists are diverse. We come from different parties and different backgrounds. But there was one thing that was common. We were together in harmony because we had a common goal. That was to stop the destruction. If there is a change in this country today, if a minister can be sentenced while holding office, that situation was created through the Aragalaya.
එයාව හිරගෙදරට දාන්න පුළුවන් උනේ අරගලේ නිසා කියලා මම අද කියනවා. ආයේ මැයි 9ක් එද්දී
When the 9th of May comes around again, the politicians will not be able to carry out their terrorist activities again. These citizens won't fall for fairy tales. For all those attempting to portray that they had massive crowds at the May Day rallies, none of you have a crowd. The citizens are on one side and you are on the other.
මෙතන හැමෝම හිතාගෙන ඉන්නව ඇවිලා මේ අරගලකරුවන් අරගලේ කර ඇවිලා රනිල් වික්‍රමසිංහ ගේන්න කියලා. හැබැයි ඒක බොරු කතාවක්.
The weekly silent protest at the Liberty Circle took place today as well.
Civil activists gathered at the Liberty Circle in Colombo to express their dismay over the lack of attention to pressing issues in the country. Activists held placards to express their dismay to the current state of affairs.
Newsfirst with the people.
Colombo Chief Magistrate Tilina Gamage issued an order preventing former Member of Parliament Diana Gamage from travelling overseas. The court mandated that this order be promptly communicated to both the Controller General of Immigration and Immigration and the State Intelligence Authorities.
Colombo Chief Magistrate Tilina Gamage issued the order today in response to a case involving the submission of false information to the Controller General of Immigration and Immigration during passport application. The court's decision was prompted by concerns that Diana Gamage might attempt to leave the country before appearing in court. The Criminal Investigation Department's failure to formally name her as a suspect in the passport-related case, despite having ample facts to do so, raised the alarm. The magistrate's ruling followed consideration of a motion submitted by the aggrieved party, including Oshala Lakmal Hera.
As per the Supreme Court ruling, there is ample evidence to name her as a suspect and therefore there is a possibility for her to flee the country. Therefore a travel ban was sought and it was given. We have already filed a motion to issue a travel ban against her passports, including her diplomatic passports and British passport.
The Supreme Court yesterday issued a writ that effectively terminates Diana Gamage's tenure as a Member of Parliament. The Supreme Court determined that Diana Gamage lacks legal citizenship in Sri Lanka, rendering her ineligible to hold a position as a Member of Parliament. Diana Gamage also expressed her views at a media briefing today.
මේකේ පිටිපස්සේ ඉන්නවා මේ සජබේ ඉන්න නායකතුමා.
The leader and the General Secretary of the Samagijana Balawegya is behind this. It has been going on for 4 years now. The parliament should be dissolved. They cannot silence me. I will stand up against injustice. I will speak on behalf of the people of this country. I will definitely enter politics in the future. Now a decision has been given that I am not a citizen of this country, not even a dual citizen. If that is the case, I want to ask, if a citizen of England comes to Sri Lanka and forms a party, becomes its General Secretary and assigns that party to someone, what is the legality of that? If this is the decision, this party is illegal. Because as the General Secretary, I assign that party to our National Front with my signature. The other is that there are crises in that party. In the future, I will tell you how this party was formed.
මේ පක්ෂය හදපු විදිහත් කොහොමද කියන්න ඉදිරියට මම කියනවා. දැනට නීතිඥවරු සමග කතා කරගෙන.
Currently, I am discussing it with my lawyers. According to the law of this country, if it can be appealed, yes, I am ready to appeal for it.
නම් ඔව් මම ඒක අපීල් කරන්න ලෑස්ති.
The Samagijana Balawegya informed the Election Commission today that former MP Mujibur Rahman will be appointed to the vacant National List MP seat following the court order issued against Diana Gamage.
He sacrificed the lot for the party. He stepped down from his parliamentary seat to contest the local government election as the Colombo mayoral candidate. So the party submitted his name as it is our duty to do so.
දැන් මේ සිදු කළ ඔබතුමාලට කරපු වංචාව පිළිබඳ ඔබතුමාලා නීතිමය ක්‍රියාමාර්ග
නොමෙතන අපේ පක්ෂයට කරපු හානියට මේ කරපු නීති විරෝධී කරන අපිව නොමග යවීම සම්බන්ධව අපි නීතිඥයෝ සමග සාකච්ඡා කරලා අවශ්‍ය තීරණ ගන්න.
එකක් මතක තියාගන්න ඕනේ.
Remember that this is not a party created by Diana Gamage. These statements are made by unintelligent people. Yesterday I saw a minister making a similar statement in Parliament. Diana Gamage did not form any party. She was the secretary of an existing party. She resigned from her post as secretary and Ranjit Madhumbandara became the general secretary of that party and Sajid Premadasa became the leader of that party.
සජිත් ප්‍රේමදාස මැතිතුමා පක්ෂේ නායකයා වුණා. එච්චරයි.
Several organizations filed a complaint with the Criminal Investigation Department today against Diana Gamage. They demanded an investigation into violations of the Immigrants and Emigrants Act, operating in the country without a valid visa, defrauding Parliament as a public representative, misappropriation of public funds and violation of the Offences Against Public Property Act.
No one can avoid this situation by claiming they weren't aware. Everybody in the system was aware. There are more than 10 to 12 parliamentarians who hold dual citizenship.
The Elections Commission announced that Mujibur Rahman was declared elected as a Member of Parliament to fill the vacancy created due to the determination of the Supreme Court cancelling the parliamentary membership of Diana Gamage. An extraordinary gazette was issued today. Parliamentarian Niroshan Pereira called for the immediate arrest of Diana Gamage.
She had lied about her citizenship as per the Supreme Court ruling. She lost her parliamentary seat. A travel ban was also imposed on her. She should be in custody. She has been in the country without a valid visa since 2015. Therefore, the law cannot be implemented in two different ways, one for the poor and another for the rich.
The 117th Administrative Council meeting of the Asia-Pacific Broadcasting Union convened earlier today at the Stein Studios in Ratmalana.
This event brings together media business and the news leaders from across the Asia-Pacific region, and this year Stein Studios hosted this major gathering in Sri Lanka. Secretary General of the ABU, Ahmed Nadeem, was also present. The delegates were welcomed by Group CEO of the Capital Maharaja Group, Sunil Kanodia.
We as a group have completed 94 years of excellence since opening its door 9 decades ago. Our group has become an integral part of the Sri Lankan life. Our numerous partners and subsidiaries supply a various array of products and services ranging from PVC pipes to tea. Our media arm, the nation's first total entertainment solution provider, touches the lives of everyone in our island nation. Today, our group stands firmly in the forefront of Sri Lanka landscape. The media industry has undergone dramatic growth and change over the last 2 decades, due in part to globalization, democratization, and technical and creative innovation in the digital arena. This rapid growth has meant significant changes in the structure of media organizations and markets. Journalists and media workers are increasingly being deployed all over the world.
Sri Lanka's National Intellectual Property Organisation Director General, who was also the guest of honour, stressed on the role of broadcasting unions in the development of nations in her address.
A strong and well-funded media is not only about providing people with information, documentaries and entertainment, it's also about contributing to the growth of the economy of the country and also the region. A fundamental question for broadcasting in all countries, therefore, is how well this expanding market would serve the public interest. The impact of the new technologies in terms of the massive expansion of broadcasting channels is remarkable. I'm glad to mention here that we have been reported that during the past few years, Capital Maharaja Broadcasting has paid such royalty to right holders in the music industry through their collective management organizations who look after the rights of music industry artists, aligning with the said regulations of copyright. In the near future, we hope to access the WIPO Internet treaties, and we also hope to support the upcoming WIPO Broadcasting Treaty.
Group Director of the Capital Maharaja Group, Shevan Daniel, also spoke at the event.
We are at strategic junction, surrounded by the Sea of Sri Lanka. We feel the wind on our face, the wind of the north and the south and the east and the west of the world lives and breathes in this nation. And so what we do here is particularly important. It's amidst this unpredictability, this complexity, that we must plan to rise. Not just survive, we must plan to rise. And in order to do that, ladies and gentlemen, the world needs clarity. The power of ideas and the quality of leadership becomes so important. We're here because the decisions that we take here in this union are the decisions that we take on behalf of the millions that all of you represent back home.
Following the inauguration of the session, the members of the Administrative Council meeting of the Asia Pacific Broadcasting Union engaged in extensive dialogue on a wide range of topics at a roundtable discussion.
Sustaining stability was the theme of a panel discussion that was organized by the Central Bank of Sri Lanka this evening.
While highlighting the importance of moving in the same direction and moving in the right direction going forward, medium to long-term basis, while restoring the sustainability, there are short-term, there are few things that we need to accomplish yet. One is to complete the external directory sucking process. DDO part has already been completed. There are a few parts with the CPC, and the external part is obviously with the bilateral. We have agreement in principles. We are in the process of finalizing the agreement, the memorandum MOU signing, and both with OCC and also with China. So that also we are making good progress. We have made good progress already, so we hope that we can complete. And also the other part is the commercial creditors. Partly one is the CDB, we are making good progress, whereas in all the other side, again with the ISP, the group representatives of the committee, we are engaging in good faith and making good progress. So we had first round of engagement openly, and then we continue to have this engagement, and we hope that we can complete that. That's a short-term, immediate kind of a short-term kind of a thing we want to complete. And then obviously the completion of the review with the IMF is also important milestone that will give more confidence and kind of endorsement that we move in the right direction in terms of policies that we are committed under the program, and we need to move in the same direction to ensure that you give markets and the public the confidence that we are in the right direction in both, also getting support from multilateral agencies, as well as once we complete the exercise, we hope that we will get a lot more support from our bilateral partners in terms of the official creditors.
The chief of the Sri Lanka Banks Association stressed on staying on course with the IMF program.
Venezuela, as one of the largest oil providers, suppliers, still they went into multiple defaults, more of a geopolitical issue. Now, Latam, Argentina is a classic example of how we can relate a little bit, moving away from policies and moving away from the path continuously with political change. So that's something that we should not do. So staying on course, staying with the IMF would be critical. Now the real challenge is the IMF forecasted growth at 3%. Is it enough? Is another conversation that we need to have. Should we look at 4 to 5%? Then how should we look at it? Are we trying to stimulate the economy again by fiscal stimulus? It will be not very healthy. So productivity in the private sector would be critical. Those are areas for us to look at. But specifically on the IMF program, on the growth aspect, I think we need to sit and discuss in terms of where the growth would come from. At least by end of this year, hopefully debt restructuring is over. Fiscal will hopefully improve a little bit from where we are.
Chairman of the Advocata Institute, Murtaza Jafarji, commented on the absence of competition for electricity prices.
2 days ago, Cabinet makes an announcement that they are going to give Adani 400 megawatts of wind power at a rate of 8.3 US cents. It's at Mana. The Ceylon Electricity Board advertised for a 50 megawatt tender today. Today was the tender date. 4 or 5 Sri Lankan companies, they may have had partners. It's a 2 envelope system. We don't know what the second envelope, which has the financial proposal. Probably the tariff is less than 6 cents. So why are we paying 8.3 cents for an untendered project? The IMF Governor's Diagnostic Report says, tender, tender, tender. You must have procurement. We don't have procurement law, we have procurement guideline. Now, how are you going to drive the electricity price down if you don't have competition? Last week was a solar tender. They were small, 160 megawatts, 5 megawatts, 10 megawatts. The average price came at 6 cents. We were awarding 100 megawatt projects at 8.5 US cents. Larger size, scale, dry areas, more preferential areas in Mana where the wind regime is higher, the price should be going down.
A senior International Monetary Fund official warned that a Cold War-type divide puts trade and investment at risk. Geeta Gopinath, first Deputy Managing Director of the International Monetary Fund, said that as the world moves towards an increasingly bipolar order, the growing divide between US-led and China-aligned blocs is taking a toll on the global economy as trade and investment flows are redirected along geopolitical lines in ways not seen since the Cold War.
Question is, how bad is this fragmentation? So we go back and look at the Cold War, the last time we thought of the world in terms of blocs, I guess. So if you have the Western and Eastern blocs back then, starting from around 1948 or so, and you see what that line shows you, is basically how much trade fell between blocs. The solid blue line is how much trade fell between blocs during the Cold War, and the red is where we are now in terms of time, right? If you compare it to the cumulative drop, it's nothing. What's happening now is fairly small, but of course, there are reasons for concerns because we're still at an early stage, and the question is whether we can prevent going down that road. And there are two other important reasons for concern, which is one was back then, global trade to GDP was around 16%. Now global trade to GDP is 45%. So the cost of decoupling or fragmentation is just that much higher this time around. Second, the 1950s onwards was the time when countries within a bloc, or more geopolitically aligned countries, were actually taking down trade restrictions, while right now we seem to be much more in the environment of just many countries becoming protectionist and looking inwards. One thing that's better than back then is the economic and diplomatic heft of the non-aligned bloc. Back then, they were very small. They barely had a role in global trade, global supply chains. But the non-aligned bloc is much bigger at this point, and that can help attenuate some of the, the worst-case scenarios.
Brown's Investments PLC has emerged as the world's leading in tea producer.
The Newsfirst Finance Report.
Lipton Teas and Infusions announced it has agreed terms of a partnership which will result in the transfer of its tea estates in Kenya, Rwanda and Tanzania to Brown's Investments, alongside an agreement that all tea sold by Brown's worldwide will be grown and harvested to a new set of standards covering quality, social and environmental protections. This long-term partnership will make Brown's the world's leading tea exporter, around 87 million kilograms a year, as well as one of the largest suppliers to the world's largest tea company, Lipton Teas and Infusions. By working together, the two companies will raise tea quality globally and accelerate the application of responsible farming methods across the industry to drive sustainable growth. Brown's will invest in its estates in Kenya and Sri Lanka to meet the new standards by 2025, as well as in the creation of additional skilled employment opportunities in Kenya. Terms of the transaction, which is subject to standard regulatory clearances, are not disclosed. In line with Lipton Teas and Infusions' vision of creating value for all, the proceeds of the transaction will be reinvested into the East Africa region to drive local and industry-wide progress in relevant areas such as skills development and climate change mitigation. The government of Kenya has supported the companies in identifying opportunities for local communities to benefit from the partnership and future growth of the industry. Shares totaling 15% of the main Kenyan operating company will be offered to the communities of Kericho and Bomet, where the estates are situated, at a substantial preferential discount to create accessible communal equity and mutually aligned economic participation. Lipton Teas and Infusions and Browns are also jointly creating a community welfare trust with an initial 1 billion Kenyan shillings dedicated to helping address other needs at local and neighbouring communities.
The News First Finance Report.
The Sri Lankan contingent for the World T20 World Cup was announced today. The team consists of 15 players and 4 travelling reserves.
The Sri Lankan squad for the T20 World Cup was approved by Minister of Sports and Youth Affairs Harin Fernando. Wanindu Hasaranga has been appointed as the skipper of the team, while Charita Salanka will serve in the capacity of vice-captain. The Sri Lankan team consists of Kusal Mendis, Pathum Nisanka, Kamidu Mendis, Sadira Samaruvikrama, Angelo Matthews, Dasun Shanaka, Dhananjay De Silva, Mahish Theekshana, Dunit Vellalage, Dushmanta Chamira, Nuwan Tushara, Matisha Patirana and Dilshan Madhushankar. Asita Fernando, Vijayakant Vyaskant, Bhanuka Rajapaksa and Janit Lianage have been named in the team as travelling reserves. The team will depart for the World Cup on the 14th of May.
And that's a wrap of Primetime News on TV1 for tonight.
Thank you for watching.
Good night.